We're recording.
Okay, I will call the September 25th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting to order. Ms. Ramble, will you please call the roll?
Jay Castile, Jim Jackson,
Here.
Pete McGorry,
Here.
David Miller,
Here.
Steve Pajali,
Here.
Connor Whalen,
Here.
Mike Zuloff.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is approval of minutes from August 28th, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to look those minutes over?
Mr. Chairman, I move that those minutes be approved as submitted.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, number 3, we have a public hearing on 518 Jackson Street. I think I'll let Mr. Oakes give us an overview of that project.
Yes, thank-
Application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning map from what is currently PF Public Facilities to RMF Residential, multifamily residential, excuse me. The adjacent zoning of this property to the north is PF Public Facilities, to the east is PF Public Facilities, to the south is R2F2 Family Residential, and to the west is both PF Public Facilities and R2F2 Family Residential. The existing use of this site is residential. The proposed use is staying residential. The structure has historically been a rooming house for the church staff of the adjacent building. The applicant is proposing to keep the rooming house concept, but individualize the rooms for long-term rentals. To do so, a zoning change must take place. The current zoning, which is the public facilities, only allows residential use as an accessory use to the main use, which at the time was the church. For rezoning applications, zone map amendments are evaluated based on the current and desired land use of the applicant and the broader perspective of whether the zoning change makes sense for the expected future land use of the site and the surrounding parcels. The existing parcel is about a half block away from a district which allows rooming houses and multifamily as a main use. Staff has determined that rezoning to the multifamily residential zoning district will allow the building to become an active use in harmony with the neighborhood and its historical use. The zoning change is appropriate and is aligned with the comprehensive plan. The multifamily residential zone is more appropriate in context of this residential footprint. The lack of available housing units in Sandusky has identified a strong need for more units of all types, including what's proposed, and this project will increase the supply. The Bicentennial Vision Comprehensive Plan outlines a number of priorities for the Central Neighborhood District. Some of the priorities related to this site are, which this is the Central District, is to preserve an intact housing stock and maintain quality of life in the neighborhood, and to strengthen neighborhoods and enhance amenities and connections to downtown. Staff examined the Bicentennial Comprehensive Plan as it relates to this area and suggests that this rezoning could offer great potential towards increasing the quality of life, preserving an existing historic building, and helping to shape Sandusky as a livable city. Planning processes and studies more recent to the comprehensive plan, including the Firelands Region Housing Needs Assessment, call for the need to embrace a wide variety of housing types in order to fill the gap of housing in our community. This parcel does meet all surrounding and current area and yard use as proposed. There were no objections from other city staff for this project, and staff recommends the approval of the proposed zone map amendment at 518 Jackson Street with the following conditions. That's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building department, engineering department, division of planning, and any other applicable agency at the appropriate time in the construction of operations of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oakes. Since this is a public hearing, I would ask that anyone that wants to speak in favor of this application, if they would come up to the podium and state their name and address for the record.
I'm Alex Smith, 5117 Home Gardner Road. We bought the house. We saw for years that the church wanted a purpose for it, and we really wanted to kind of use the original purpose of the house for it and solve a problem here in Sandusky of affordable housing and a housing shortage. The end goal of our proposal is to provide a affordable living for young professionals to move here and save and live at a a pretty nice place while they can save to end up buying a permanent residence here in Sandusky. That's our goal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from the table?
How many units are you planning on doing that in there? 'Cause I was just wondering why multifamily and not two-family like the adjacent.
It would be around 12 rooms, so 12 units in there.
12 units in there? Like efficiency units, shared kitchen?
Yep, shared kitchen and shared bathrooms.
Okay. But they would be long-term rentals?
6 to 12 months.
I had a question, but
Mr. Jackson?
he took my questions. I just want to know what the rules were going to be. They're going to have use of the kitchen and, okay,
Yep, everyone had use of kitchen and like laundry and things like that would be provided.
okay. That's all I had.
Any other questions from Mr. Miller?
I was wondering if you could project your plans for parking, if you're having 12 units, that these would be presumably singles, or would they potentially be couples in units? And
Singles, couples, whoever's really looking to move here and kind of save money to eventually buy a permanent residence,
so you have like 12 or nine spaces indicated on a little drawing I saw in there that's behind.
Yeah, so if you see up here, we're looking to move out the trailer in the back and provide parking back there for everybody.
How many people do you think you can park back there?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
If I recall, we looked at it before and there was room for up to 20 spaces in the width, or for how much land area they have behind the building.
I recall the same thing, up to 20 comfortably. We didn't do a full site assessment, but I'm confident with 20, up to 20.
And their application stated that they would provide one per unit, one per dwelling room.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I got one more question.
Mr. Hicks.
Is there going to be a permanent individual that's going to stay there to like control everything or is it just going to be the individuals that rent the rooms? I'm saying, is there going to be any kind of governing control over the individuals that are going to be there while you're renting these rooms out?
So you're saying there's going to be like someone on site?
Yeah, someone on site.
We have not discussed that yet. That could be something we add, something we're going to do, but
Okay.
it's dependent on kind of the zoning and what we get approved here.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Zuloff?
okay, I apologize if you already covered some of this because I couldn't, same old complaint, I couldn't hear everything Mr. Oaks said. Now, do we already have, will this be coming for site plan approval because of the change in use?
We were not interpreting it as a change in use because it would be the same use as the existing use was always done historically. I will say that in conversation with the business partner, it was assured to me that there would be a resident management person or family in the building living there.
Okay, and then is
And
there,
the definition of a rooming house in our code is defined as a resident family renting rooms to other individuals. So I don't believe they could legally operate without having a manager.
a resident manager, yeah, okay.
One of the tenants being named as the manager of the property.
Right, and very often they might be paying rent or working at reduced rent or whatever as a long-term tenant.
Correct.
And taking care of little things like that. So we're,
Achieve.
we would, under this zoning change, we would not need any kind of variance, conditional use permit, any of that sort, because a rooming house would fit. And could you inform us on how the building code covers minimum square footage and occupational density?
Yes, so the section 1341 of our code is in the Environmental Health and Housing Code, specifies the size of rooms that are allowed to be the amount of egress that every resident would be able to have, for emergency escape, the number of bathrooms. It's one full bathroom per 6 persons according to the code. And the square footage, minimum square footage per person, egress, sanitary maintenance, that cooking cannot be in the rooms, that it has to be in the kitchen, heating requirements, smoke detectors, fire extinguishers. So there's a comprehensive.
Okay, and this is, it's reasonable to, can those requirements be complied with under this application, or do we not know yet? Does that depend on the alterations to the building?
It's my understanding that would be required, that they be adhering to those in order to get a certificate of occupancy. But we
Right.
could add in the rezoning, we could add a condition from planning commission just to make that really clear and document that they would be adhering to.
Right.
To the
And-
documentation of that code.
And does the applicant then understand those requirements that you'll have to meet, code requirements in addition, that this is not the only requirement,
Yes.
the zoning change? Okay. All right. So I'm not against adding the condition. It probably doesn't hurt anything just to put it on the record. But that would be, so are you contemplating alterations to meet those requirements, or do you feel the structure already meets those requirements?
We're going to make alterations to meet the requirements to the
I
existing
see.
building.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions from around the table? Okay, I had a few questions.
Yes, sir.
How many restrooms are in this building?
Currently, it's 3.5 bathroom, but depending on the requirements, what we need, we're willing to add more and to meet all the standards.
Okay. And you said you were going to market to people that worked at the hospital and young professionals,
Yeah.
that type of market?
So people who, nurses coming here to travel to work, or people moving back to Sandusky who, can't afford to buy a primary residence or rents. It's an affordable way to live and eventually save money to eventually move back to Sandusky, buy a primary residence here, and eventually live here permanently. So
Do you think there's a market for those type of people out there?
I do believe there is.
How do you think you'll go about marketing to those folks?
It's okay to say you haven't thought about it
I
yet.
haven't thought about it yet. A lot of social media, a lot of things like that. There's always people graduating,
Yeah.
things like that, getting
And-
jobs.
Okay. And to explain myself, I'm kind of a segue into the resident manager. I think a property like this, there were nuns living there, right?
Correct.
So it was probably a pretty peaceful location. And I think a rooming house with 12 occupants, if it's not closely watched over and managed properly, can get out of control. And
Correct.
that would be my concern. And I would certainly hope that somebody would add that to the motion, that there's a resident manager on site at all times to make sure that it stays in control. It's a beautiful building. I think it's probably a good project, but that's one of my concerns.
Yeah, we just didn't want to see it get knocked down and kind of use its historical use, and thought maybe that could bring more people to the area permanently.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just
Mr.
to follow up on my comments, and to follow up on your comments, we're going to have literally hundreds of construction workers here in Perkins on the old KBI site. Just as an example, and we do have construction workers from out of town that I observe all the time with various projects we have going. I'm sure that'll be welcome. I'm sure they can afford a nice place. I think you well know the nicer you make it, the more rent you can get. And if somebody's here alone, it's a valuable alternative to living in a motel where you can pay an awful lot for a room like this and still be way better off than a hotel room. So well-managed and keeping it nice It definitely has a chance to be an asset. It's a beautiful building. I like adaptive reuse of buildings like this. It could go south too if it's mismanaged. So I have no problem, conditioning it on complying with the building code. But I'm not sure we can. We're talking rezoning here. I'm not sure we can condition a rezoning on a future use, or can we? Perhaps the law director has an opinion on that.
My understanding, this is a public hearing. I don't know that we're moving on anything tonight.
Well, we would be asked to make a recommendation once the public hearing is over,
When
right?
it's closed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can make any recommendation you want.
Right. Thank you for that. I forgot that it's the city commission that approves it. We're just moving it along with a recommendation, so thank you. We could condition our recommendation on future use. I'm not sure it would do any good. I think they're going to have to comply with the law anyway, and we can't make them comply with the law that doesn't exist. Forgive my rambling here. I'm thinking out loud. Thanks.
To go off what you said, one of our things was we've been talking to companies in the area, and they bring in people to train for 6+ months at different times, and having an area that's set, that's not a hotel, that seems like home, that's something they're definitely interested in. Having something that's reliable, something like that.
It's nice in walking distance from downtown,
Yeah.
places to eat, and it's a quiet place to stay, and yet close to amenities, walking distance to amenities. So, yeah. And a beautiful building.
Any other questions or comments from around the table?
One for staff.
Mr. Whalen?
So this is a public hearing. Do you send out notices to neighbors?
Yeah, so notices were sent within 300 feet, just like
We should ask if anyone else is here.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone that would like to speak against this application? If not, we'll close this public hearing and come back to the table for any discussion that we might have. Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mr. Vitale, I am trying to keep it square in my mind of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and I think there may be more general agreement that having a facility in that building that addresses availability of affordable housing and people in transition and all that, I think those virtues or goals would make rezoning appropriate regardless of who is doing the proposal on what particular modifications to the building, and the things like the parking that I'd be concerned about or the resident manager. Those seem like things that need to be controlled down the road, but our job is to recommend the rezoning, and that seems to be an easier question and pretty straightforward to me.
Is that a motion?
I could make a motion, I'd be willing to make a motion, but that was under discussion.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I would like to have something, if it's just a note for those further on down the road, to maybe look hard and long at ensuring that there's a resident manager at that location.
Well, and I think
I tend to agree with you as far as what we're voting on tonight.
if it would satisfy you, I would be glad to make a motion to include a provision that any subsequent dwelling units be compliant with the code, and if necessary, with the code for that particular kind of housing, that the boarding house kind of concept, if that's appropriate. But hey, we're just rezoning it.
Yes.
After that point, there could be a lot of different plans that maybe involve less units or that don't require but if going forward with the plan as presented, it'd be comforting to know there was some assurance that they fully intend to comply with the law, that's all.
Okay. So, Mr. Zuloff?
Yeah, thank you. Right, as long as we understand that once we rezone it, I mean, I would point out that once we rezone it, they could change their minds and do a more conventional number of apartments, which I would like even better, just regular, nice apartments in a beautiful old house. But that's going to be the owner's choice. If we decide to rezone this and we open it up to possibilities, all we're doing here is, again, we can't really, what are we going to do? Rescind the zoning change if we don't like what they're doing? We can't. That would take a whole another, and then they'd be grandfathered and with whatever they did legally. So yeah, getting it on record, I've got no problem with, adding some wording that might not mean that much just to make people thinking about it. So yeah, why not? But it is a rezoning. Once it's rezoned, they can, it's not a conditional use permit, right? Conditional use permit's conditioned on certain things. This is a rezoning. Once they rezone it, they can do anything within the code that they want. So as long as we understand that, I'm fine with voting to approve this application with whatever conditions we want to put on it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McGuire.
If I heard it properly, thank you. I think staff had indicated if the plan to go forward as a rooming or boarding house occurs, part of that requirement under the existing code is a resident manager.
Right.
So, and then if the plan would change to be, let's say, 4 apartments, then you don't need one because then it's multifamily.
Right.
But you need
So-
4 kitchens and.
Yeah,
four-
yeah, right. So as Mr. Zuloff indicated, what we're really doing is just changing this from public facility to residential multifamily, which seems like an appropriate use in that area and for this building. So I personally don't know that we need to say anything more than that if it's already in the code. And not to mention disorderly conduct laws apply to everybody. So, even if there were no resident manager, somebody's not behaving themselves, they might be in violation of the law.
Yeah, I just, if there are issues and there's no resident manager and none of us are around, that could become a detriment to that neighborhood. So that's my only comment. I think when you have 3.5 bedrooms and 12 units, you may need a resident manager just to referee who goes in and out of those bathrooms. So, but anyhow, I'm comfortable with staff following up on that. And if Mr. Miller, is your motion on the table, or do you?
Yeah, I would be glad to hear Ms. Rambo state the motion, or I could take another wing at it.
Do you have a motion yet or not?
I wrote to approve with compliant with code.
Yeah.
That sounds
Second.
right.
There's been moved and seconded.
And I don't think anybody did second it.
I just
Mr.
second.
Oh, I'm
Zuloff.
sorry, okay.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion?
One real quick, is that a pretty sure remembering, or is the resident manager in the code?
It's in the definition of a rooming house in the zoning code.
I'm satisfied.
Okay, I'll ask Ms. Rambo to call the vote.
Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
David Miller,
Yes.
Pete McGorry,
Yes.
Jim Jackson.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is another public hearing for Eric Mingus. And I'll let Mr. Oakes do the overview on that also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a zone map amendment for parcel 60-00261.000. This current site is zoned PF Public Facilities. The proposed rezone is for R175 single-family residential. The adjacent zoning to the north is both general manufacturing and PF public facilities. To the east is general manufacturing. To the south is PF public facilities. And to the west is R175 single-family residential. The existing use of this site is agriculture. The proposed use is residential. Eric and April Mingus are in the process of pre-development at this site for a single-family home. The plan is to subdivide the 3.1 acre portion of the parcel on your screen into 3 smaller parcels suitable for one single-family home on each lot. This will be a multi-phase project. Phase 1 is the extension of Ferndale Drive, approximately 20 feet in front of parcel 2, and then the installation of required utilities and the construction of one single-family home. City staff examined the City Bicentennial Vision Comprehensive Plan as it relates to this area and suggests this rezoning could offer great potential towards increasing the quality of life and helping to shape Sandusky as a livable city. The parcels meet all area and yard requirements as proposed. The rezoning application for this is evaluated based on current desired land use of the applicant and broader perspective of whether the zoning change makes sense for the expected future land use of the site and surrounding parcels. The existing parcel is adjacent to R175 single-family zoning to the west. Staff has determined that changing to this as well, the R175 single-family residential zoning, for the portion of this parcel requested is harmonious to the surrounding zoning and uses. This is adjacent to the Cold Creek subdivision. This will be, in a sense, an extension to that neighborhood use, just with larger parcels. This is in the West District. Part of the comprehensive plan indicates that in the West District that staff should, and other staff, planning staff and also board member staff should look at strategic infill housing on vacant lots in this district. The applicant has also submitted a preliminary development plan for a major subdivision at this parcel, and this is the first step in that process, and that will be brought forward after this application is presented. There's no comments or concerns from other city staff. Staff recommends approval of the proposed amendment to the zone map for the specific portion of parcel 60-00261.000 with the following conditions. Thus, that all applicable permits are obtained through the Building Department, Engineering Department, Division of Planning, and any other applicable agency prior to any construction. Thank you.
I'll just add just a couple comments to reiterate what Mr. Oaks said. The rezoning is for this section of that land, and so we're looking for this, the public hearing for that, obviously, and we're looking for a recommendation on the zoning. The immediate next agenda item is about the subdivision of this property for residential. So that's why it's two agenda items in a row.
Thank you, Ms. Blair. Mr. Zulauf.
Just forgive me, I didn't really quite follow that. Regarding the report, is the site plan that I'm seeing a later edition? I don't remember seeing that online, but I might have missed it, and I can't read it now.
There's a presentation of the subdivision next on the agenda, so you'll have the slide in front of you for that. This is just about the zoning of that portion of the parcel for residential.
Oh, okay, well, the reason, my concern is, and maybe you can comment on this, my concern is the proximity to a manufacturing district. You're now going to have, if I'm reading this correctly, you're now going to have you're asking us to go from multifamily to residential. Multifamily is often used as a buffer between, a traditional neighborhood residential single family and some other more intense use or some other possibly conflicting use, right? And when it's multifamily, you can, have parking lots as a buffer. So now we're going to have, unless I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like we're going to have a residential lot cheek to jowl against a manufacturing district. Is that correct, right? And I wonder if we shouldn't at least consider either a mandatory buffer, maybe just let it be woods or whatever, or even doing a PUD, which would give the applicant much more flexibility in how they configured this. But I'm not terribly comfortable with just putting a resident, especially likely upscale, it's going to be a large lot, right? Cheek to jowl with manufacturing, who knows what could be there in the future, right? Now, you sell somebody, and here's the worst part about conflicts like this, is that somebody thinks they're buying a house next to the woods. And then someday, how dare you, let somebody build, a manufacturing plant? It wouldn't be a quarry, but it could be, equipment running 24 hours a day, which is subject to different noise abatement.
Mr. Zuloff, I'm wondering if we could pause this discussion since this is a public hearing, and maybe if there's anybody out in the audience that would like to speak in favor.
Okay.
And we can come back to this once we get into discussion.
Okay, well, let me wrap it up then. So my problem is I don't quite understand what what all that's being proposed yet, but that's my concern, and I'm going to be asking for some sort of
Clarification.
or know what we're going to do about it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zuloff. Since this is a public hearing, is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this application? Could you get up and to the podium and state your name and address for the record?
Hi, I'm Eric Mingus. I live at 404 High Street, Sandusky. Was a resident of Cold Creek. I lived there for 20 years. I built a house 20 years back, and then we didn't just buy that piece that you see. We bought, it's 15 and a half acres. It's the whole stretch from Venice all the way to the back. And then what you see where the manufactured homes are, that's a creek and a woods. It's quite a buffer between that and that manufactured area. And then I own south of Ferndale and the north. And then we're splitting that into 3 lots. And the 3 lots that we're doing is, I got 2 sons. I already got 1 son that built up on the left, where I built him, and then I got, thanks. Then I got my other 2 sons and then us. So it's that whole thing for us that we bought it for. That was why I sold my house, so we could do this dream, is then I'd have all of us right here in this one spot. And then the north, I have a whole nother idea for 30 houses that I'm going to present right after I get our house up. So as the buffer from the manufactured point for us, I mean, we're coming off of Cold Creek with already upscale houses and then making a right on Ferndale. And then the only way that Ferndale's supposed to come back connecting to 101 eventually, but it's a long way. So.
But that land to the east is indeed manufacturing, right?
The land to the east is currently zoned manufacturing and currently used as residential. So you can see the land use above, north of Cold Creek is all single-family residential now.
So the applicant needs to understand that is zone manufacturing, could lawfully be used for a manufacturing purpose.
Yeah.
That purple area there.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yep. And then there's a row of, right where the red line is, there's a row of trees there, and then the whole back and down between us and Cold Creek.
Yeah.
So it almost makes it private.
You'll be as old as me someday, and you'll see that stuff that people say will never happen, and it'll always be that way, and then it isn't.
No, I understand.
Time flies when you're not paying attention. And we've got to consider, when we consider rezoning, is what could happen in the future. Our planning horizon is a lot longer than one lifetime. It has to be in perpetuity what's going to happen. And right now, we're looking at upscale housing next to potential conflicting manufacturing uses.
Yeah.
Just so you, and I don't know if this could lead to maybe another angle on this, or maybe doing a PUD where you get some more flexibility, or maybe a platting this with a buffer. But for someone who's been around the block on this stuff, I think it's a problem.
Would that fall under the heading of caveat emptor?
Well, see, this is, if the only party affected would be the present owner, it's one thing,
Yes.
but I have to consider the
Mr.
future
Zuloff.
owners and the future well-being and potential conflicts in the future.
Mr. Zuloff, if there's anybody that appreciates that argument more than me, I'd like to find him, because I use that all the time with transient housing.
Right.
You have to look into the future, what exists today may become passé down the road.
Well, I don't want to lecture you because I
But-
know
but
you
any-
know this
but-
stuff.
but-
But I don't want to debate the chair either.
That's for another time.
Yes.
Is there anybody else that has, Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, I have a question about your figures here. It looks like Lot 1 is around 100 feet, and it looks like if to be in the 20 feet into your lot, you'd have to extend Ferndale 120 feet. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's 320, so I got my two other sons, so I got one lot for him, and then we're building in the middle, and then I got the other son. And then we're extending Ferndale, like, to the second lot for now.
Okay. But
So-
you're really expanding, the first phase is going to be like 120 feet, to put 20 foot in front of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions? No other questions? My only question, Mr. Mingus, my mind's a little fuzzy here. Wasn't there some sort of encroachment issue back there that you kind of wandered into a while back? I just wanted to make sure that that's all been resolved.
Oh, yeah.
And we're all right with
Yep.
that. Okay. And is part of that in the floodplain, part of that property?
the very back where the creek is,
Yeah.
and I've had a paper where I had it marked out, but you can almost see it way in the back. That's why the lots are big. Really, the lot that where I'm building is only like 200 feet deep, but then it's the flood zone and the woods, you know what I mean? So I just kept that, because then my north phase idea is the 30 houses, and then a retention pond, so it's a kind of plays all in together. So
Did you say 30 houses?
30.
30? Okay. Any other questions from around the table for Mr. Mingus?
Well, I wonder, do you have a building background or something? You sounds like you.
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Yep, I'm a
good.
builder.
Yeah, that's good. So you know what you're in for. The little phantom line, is that those are the setbacks? Is that what that is? Okay, that's what I thought it might be. Again, and maybe if you're lucky, you can buy a chunk of that land or just buy that other chunk of land back there.
That's kind of a future idea,
But you know that, with a PUD, you'd have more flexibility. You wouldn't even have to go through a subdividing process. You could, you could just say, this is what we want to do, and it takes longer, but city commission, but you'd be afforded, especially since it sounds like it's headed to be a family compound. You could actually like set aside a common area, and you'd have a lot of flexibility with a PUD. It would take longer to do it, but it's just something to think about.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't even know if it's possible under our code, but I don't think there's any minimum acreage in our PUD code that I recall.
I will mention that we've been working with Mr. Mingus for several months on the subdivision process and getting all of us well-versed in that.
Okay.
And that their vision was to build something that is very aligned with what is in the neighborhood of Cold Creek, which fits our zoning category of R175 very tidily. And with that, with subdividing and that traditional zoning that fits our code, we don't have something that we need to administer later like a planned unit development. So they were not looking for the flexibility that a PUD would provide. They really wanted a more traditional single-family lot.
Okay, so one option when you subdivide this would be to just put a buffer, a common area buffer right on the, when you plat the subdivision. And that would cover the future even make it more attractive for maybe a future owner if you ever wanted to, if somebody wanted to sell anything, and cover these concerns and just be better all around practice from a land use planning perspective. That's all I got to say on it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Mendes.
everybody.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this application? If not, is there anyone opposed? Okay, if not, we'll come back to the table. Any further discussion from around the table?
Comment
Ms. Blair?
I think Mr. Zuloff's bringing up good points about looking at the neighboring zoning, and manufacturing would allow some very intensive land uses. I just wanted to make a point to note that my understanding of manufacturing sites and that they're people that are bringing manufacturing to communities are looking for hundreds of acres and really large job sites. That doesn't mean that the neighboring property owner won't want to cut down all of those woods and put cement trucks there. That certainly could happen. I think that if we were to have a future land use map, which is kind of on my to-do list, most of this area, the future of this area is really valuable residential land area. So I would welcome any loaners that are adjacent to this to consider the extension of Ferndale, making more of this land more developable, and that it's a great opportunity for future residential areas, and that staff would entertain a discussion with any surrounding landowner to rezone that manufacturing to residential.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Okay,
Zuloff.
so to put some perspective to this, and I think the applicants will find this very interesting and really want to think about this. Once upon a time, this city, officially or unofficially, had a vision of Ferndale connecting to all the way to Perkins Avenue. And there was a vision of connecting. In fact, there's a little section of Ferndale in the Superior Street, as you may be aware. You're nodding your head, so good that you know about it. Well, there's a vision that all would connect, and because some folks thought it was a bad, and maybe it was a good idea once upon a time to complete that grid. I don't think it's terribly relevant anymore, and I don't think it's a very good idea anymore. But maybe we have to kind of think about that too, because I'm not sure it'd be a real good idea to have this residential neighborhood, connecting to Superior Street, right? Again, more conflicts. Next thing you know, you could have trucks going down there, industrial trucks finding it convenient to cut through a residential neighborhood. You can regulate that and everything, but things change, and we are duty bound to look at the long term, beyond even our kids' lifetime. So that's what the point I'm making.
Thank you, Mr. Zuloff. Any other discussion, comments from around the table?
I think Mike's point is good, that it's next to manufacturing zone, but in this case, I don't have a problem rolling the dice on the future there. I think I see it's owned by the same place as the owner of the manufactured homes there, so that could extend. Sure, a factory could move down there. That'd be more likely if Ferndale gets connected, but it's going to be more valuable residential, I think.
Absolutely.
And then it would be manufacturing, and at some point, if they do sell it to somebody else,
Sure.
you got to do your due diligence when you're buying a property as well. You're choosing to buy that house next to a manufacturing zone.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Oakes.
I was in contact with the neighboring property owner several months back that recently changed hands to a new owner. They were looking at expanding the mobile home park if possible. Based on my due diligence, that use is considered a legal nonconforming use. They got approvals in the late 60s, so therefore they could not expand. But based on that question being asked to me, I'm fairly confident that they don't have, at least for the time being, any wishes to move on from this use for at least the time being. I just wanted to add that to the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone prepared to make a motion on this application?
I have a comment. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead, make.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the city commission that the application to amend the zone to single-family resident be approved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Jackson seconds. Discussion?
Yeah, I rode by that area yesterday, and they're putting up signs. Were you aware of what their plans are? They've got a sign up there saying that they're going to start putting up homes.
I was not aware of that. I am aware that they have a handful of sites that have been demolished, and based on my research, they could infill those sites with new mobile homes. I have no recollection of expansion or development.
These aren't going to be mobile homes.
Okay, yeah, that's not on my radar.
They haven't talked about that.
Are you talking about the signage, are you talking about the neighboring property or the
Yes,
property?
the neighboring property. They've got a big sign up there saying that they're going to be putting homes up, not mobile homes, but actually 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes in that area. They didn't, I guess maybe they don't have to have approval.
I think they would. Same process as.
We can follow up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm giving you a heads up here.
I'm assuming there's a
Yeah.
phone number or website on the side. We can go take a
Yeah.
look.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Zuloff, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm still deliberating. I might be your symbolic no vote. It's not that I'm against what you're doing. It's just I'm going to, I think it'd be best if this issue was addressed. And I'm probably going to be the only no vote, only because I'd like to see, I'd feel better if I saw a subdivision with even if it was 10 feet of common area woods that was, just to head off future conflicts. But anyway, don't take it as personal, or don't take it as I'm against this sort of thing. But it won't be the first time I'm this symbolic lone no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Zuloff. Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, it occurs to me that you in particular might be able to refresh my memory. It seems that maybe 20 years ago or thereabouts, the light green there, that single-family residential, Cold Creek, was a PUD before regional planning and was approved as a PUD. And is that a different zoning than the single-family residential that it is now? Or did that PUD project morph into a pretty traditional-looking neighborhood or as our chief planner suggested, very compliant with our normal residential code? And be it a PUD or not for this property that we're considering, it would most likely end up the same way, given the owner's vision of what he wants to do there.
I don't remember it being a PUD. I was there 15, 20 years ago when that was done, and I don't remember it being a PUD. I thought it was just a regular subdivision. Could be wrong.
It was a major subdivision into the R175, which is the light green, and then there's a few multifamily parcels they were going to do condos on. I don't recall the developer's name.
Probably would have
but-
been a good idea. I'm not sure we even had the PUD ordinance when we did that. It might have come later.
Yeah, they do have some deed restrictions that modify the requirements for those owners a little bit. They had an assessment for the sidewalks, but it was very traditional subdivision process. That's my understanding. And then the city ended up owning it, and that kind of went down for a while.
Yeah, I think they've explained it.
Would have been a good idea.
One more quick one.
Yes.
Just not to delay this any longer, but I'm looking at this, I was curious, how did it come to be public facilities to begin with?
It
Seemed like an
was
odd
owned
zoning.
by a church.
Okay.
And so they owned it, I think, for a long time. It was just part of their asset strategy of managing their finances. I think they had a vision at one time to think about putting a church there and did not, and just held it.
Church, whatever.
And it's my understanding that they were selling this so they could fix up their church where their congregation is, which is a historic building in the city. I can't recall the name of the congregation right now. I'm sure the Mingus.
Their initial plan were, they were going to put a church up, they were going to put a nursing home up, they were going to put daycare up there. That was part of their initial plan that never got off the ground.
It's kind of irrelevant, I was just curious.
It's relevant.
Ms. Rambo, would you poll the commission on
I will.
the motion?
David Miller,
Yes.
Jim Jackson,
Yes,
Mike Zuloff,
No.
Pete McGorry,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes,
Connor Whalen.
Yes.
thank you. Okay, moving into new business. We have Mr. Mingus again submitting an application for a preliminary plat. Major subdivision, Mr. Oakes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to keep this presentation brief. It is on the same parcel that the rezoning was for, which is parcel 60-00261.000. A lot of the information as far as zoning and owners is staying the same as presented previous. I would like to touch on a piece of the zoning code, which is 1175.03. And an additional staff comment to that, which is that the preliminary plat for a major subdivision application is evaluated based on the current and desired land use of the applicant in the broader perspective, whether the major subdivision provides safe development practices, is harmonious to surrounding land uses, that the project constructs adequate utilities, and the goal of this process is to obtain a desired community environment. And that was pulled from, like I said, a zoning code section 1175.03. Thank you. Staff does recommend the approval of the proposed preliminary plat for major subdivision at parcel 60-00261.000 with the following conditions. That's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building department, engineer department, division of planning, and any other applicable agency prior to any construction. Engineering staff has been heavily involved with this process up to this point, and all of their concerns have been addressed for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oakes. Any discussion?
I have
Do you
two
have something,
comments.
Ms. Blair?
Yeah, do you mind putting the slide up that shows the lots again? So you have a diagram in your packet, and as I mentioned, we've been working with the Minguses for several months. We've met with engineering staff, building staff, just to make sure we're following all of the requirements of our subdivision code. The major part of this is because they cannot currently access that site via public roadway, they have to extend the Ferndale Drive in order to develop on the site and then bring the utilities in and everything. So this is the preliminary plat, so it's just the boundaries, that this makes sense. We will be bringing a final plat to you. The final plat has very specific details in our subdivision ordinance, construction documentation of the roadway, and a construction agreement of when they're going to do everything and how, and make sure that it's inspected. So then the city will actually accept the road that they built as city property because it's in the public right of way. So it's very detailed in the code. We're going to follow that very carefully. So this is the preliminary plat, and if you approve that, we can move on to the next step, which is to bring you the final plat, which would have a considerable more amount of detail on all that construction.
Mr. Chairman.
Discussion, Mr. Zuloff.
So this is a good time to further point out that a PUD could potentially obviate the need to extend the road and just handle access with a private drive. Just pointing that out.
So we were careful to avoid that because Ferndale right-of-way does extend all the way to the east and west, that we potentially could see the viability of residential neighborhoods
Absolutely.
around this area.
I'm not suggesting we should vacate the right-of-way. I'm
Fair.
suggesting that this particular project wouldn't necessarily, if the owner should be aware that the road could be extended, and we'd be crazy to vacate that.
Right.
We need to keep that right-of-way.
That was the first conversation we had.
But it would obviate potentially obviate the need for the applicant to immediately extend the roadway to create access to each lot, because you couldn't legally build on the lot if the roadway hasn't been extended. And that's pretty expensive to meet this, to meet those standards. A private drive be a whole different kettle of fish.
I'll mention that in the conversations with engineering, because all of the utilities have to be extended, they were not comfortable with the private drive being built in the public right of way, because that was the first angle we went. When we first started talking about this, okay, well, that doesn't have a road, could we pull a private drive off of it? We looked at pulling a private drive and snaking it through. Then what happens if somebody builds the roadway? Then you've got this asphalt going across their front yard. Okay, well, it makes sense to be in the roadway. Well, engineering doesn't want the private drive in the roadway because has to be all the utilities, and they want to make sure that they're in place correctly, and the subdivision gives them the direction to make sure the roadway is ready for, if there's housing that goes to the south of this, that it could accommodate that. If the owner to the east wants to extend it through, that they could accommodate that.
There's no way we should approve a PUD unless the engineering's done correctly. I mean, that goes without saying. Engineering wasn't, in their comments, wasn't considering a PUD, they were considering a subdivision, right? Different.
No, we started just, how do we help this guy build a house? He wants to build a house right there. How can we legally make that happen? And we went through a series of iterations of discussion.
But a PUD you wouldn't be constrained to put the house right there. You could be more creative in how you arrange the houses because it's a PUD, and you could potentially have higher density, but let's say even lower density, but you have more flexibility about how you arrange the houses and what's common area or none. And it just allows a lot more flexibility than a traditional bowling alley lots. And again, I'm not criticizing what we're doing here. I'm just saying that this is just something that maybe wasn't thought of, and I'll let it go.
Mr. Chairman, can we call the question?
Mr. McGorry, yes.
And voted against just.
Is there any other discussion? If not, would you poll the commission, Ms. Ramble?
Okay. Connor Whalen? Or is there a motion?
Yeah, did we?
Well,
I don't think we had a motion.
is there a motion
I'll
at
make
the table?
I was going to say, I didn't write down a motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Now, Ms. Ramble.
Okay. Connor Whalen?
Yes.
Steve Pajali?
Yes.
Pete McGorry?
Yes.
Mike Zuloff?
No.
Jim Jackson?
Yes.
David Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Ramble. All right.
Keep it interesting and make it annoying, and be annoying.
Never annoying, Mr. Zuloff. The next item is the Battery Park PUD extension request. And I noticed you passed this out at the table, Ms. Blair.
Yes, thank you. And we did amend the packet. When the packet was originally sent out, it was in error. There was an old memo that had gotten placed in the packet. So apologies for that. So the new memo that was actually applicable to this request was replaced in the packet yesterday, and then Ms. Rambo passed that out. So on November 22nd, 2022, the Planning Commission reviewed and approved the PUD application for the zoning amendment for 701 East Water Street, known as Battery Park. Everybody is very well familiar with that property. And then it was approved by the City Commission on April 24th, 2023. And with 6 votes in favor, 1 abstention, we had a unanimous vote from Planning Commission. According to our code, the planned unit development section 115516
The submission of the final development plan is submitted to Planning Commission within 18 months of the City Commission's approval. With the current timeline, that would be due on October 24th. The code also allows the Planning Commission to grant the applicant an extension to that 18-month time limit if the applicant can show cause why an extension should be granted. So we were approached by the applicant who gave the staff meeting. So we have meetings regularly with the development team, and they gave an extensive explanation to us. They also supplied a letter that's within the packet on cause for this extension. So they're requesting the extension of 12 months, which would extend the due date to the submission being in by October 24th, 2025. And the cause for the extension has specific timelines, including the increase in senior loan interest rates, and Mr. Sines is here, can speak this much more fluently than I can, but there were financing, grant timelines, talking with specific end users of the hotel site. So would they have to move anything or change anything? My understanding from what I've heard from them, they don't expect to make any changes to what was approved. They just want more time in order to go into that detail of design that is required of them to bring forward to us for the final development plan, because they've been holding off on that for the reasons they've given.
Thank you, Ms. Blair.
Just a
Mr.
question.
McGorry.
For a procedural question, are we being asked to recommend to the city commission, or we?
No, this is the authority of Planning Commission. So it would be a motion to grant the extension
requested
by
extension.
12 months.
Thank you.
Mr. Sines, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Aaron did a very good summary, but I do want to apologize. I was able to come in and give an update to the commissioners, so this gives me a good chance to update the Planning Commission. We have been working very hard on this project. We're moving a lot of, I'll call them the non-revenue generating portions of the project, which is Mig Street Pier, the breakwaters, making strides on those. I'm not sure if you guys are aware that we were awarded $1 million from the governor's capital budget recently, and an additional $500,000 came out of the Parks and Recs. So that's $1.5 million going right towards Mig Street Pier. So that's just one of the grants that we've have cash in hand that we're looking to start implementing.
State Parks and Rec, or
Yeah, it was all through the state parks. The extra $500,000.
$1.5 million from the state?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Money coming into the community is what you're saying?
Yes, yes. We also have a grant out that the Erie County Land Bank, we will be partnering with them. That is a grant for $10 million to help clean up the site. There's some remediation, some soils that need cleaned up over there. Didn't make any friends the past week with Aaron Klein. We actually had to bore a couple holes on the police station lot just to verify some things. So that was new asphalt, so we had to deal with that. But we are having weekly meetings with the staff to keep keep the project going and to be upfront and honest. Couple months were lost negotiating with the hotel user on the placement of the hotel, going back and forth, seeing if we wanted that transient group closest to the water, and we decided we don't. So the original plan stands that the condos and the long-term residents will have that waterfront view, and the hotel will be inland on the opposite side of Water Street. So going back and forth with them, we did not lose that hotel operator, so we're getting very close on a letter of intent with them, which will be huge to progressing the project. The hotel potentially could be the first physical upland project as we break ground, as how I see it. But I do foresee next season starting Mig Street Pier and the outer breakwaters, which I call the north breakwaters, so Mig Street and that, with ODNR sooner than later. So even in the spring, I can maintain my marina doing that work. I've met with excavators and contractors, area contractors, to get that work done. So we're moving forward on a set of 100% plans for Mig Street Pier, which will be part of the ODNR application process. So that'll allow me to start that project separately. One of the other things I'm going to start to move forward on, and discussions with the group, is there are public road extensions within the property, and if I get those funds, I would like to extend Water Street, those utilities, things like that, that makes the site appear more developable to the end users, which goes into some of the financing issues we came about in the past years with the senior lenders. These institutional lenders used to loan 85% loan to cost. Now they're about 45% loan to cost. So that increase has to be filled with equity and grants. So we're pursuing that. We have brought in some secured equity, not only from the private group, but F3, our marina operator, has earmarked some funds to invest in the Upland project itself. So this just goes to attest to the vision that everyone has over in the area and how it's really going to come around. But again, I'm here to answer any questions you guys have. This can also be considered an update for you guys, just to let you know where we're at.
Any questions for Mr. Sines? Mr. McGrory?
I've tried to pay close attention. Did I hear you say, and I don't care one way or the other, but that the potential hotel is on the other side of Meg Street?
The hotel would sit on the south side of Water Street, where it was originally planned. We were discussing moving it.
But on the
East side.
the Battery Park side of Meg Street? Yes. The police
Yes.
station side?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Maybe you said other side of Water Street.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
South side of Water.
No, but I mean, when I first said other, I thought I heard you say other. I wasn't sure. I thought you said, well, now you cleared it up.
Okay, because now I'm confused.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Zuloff, go ahead.
Okay, when I vote for this, I just want you to know that, it's not a commentary on what I think of the project. We approved it. Some things I like, some things I don't. There probably a lot of people feel the same way. We thought it was good for the community. I still think it is on balance. So it's not, when I vote for this, it's not an endorsement or a criticism of the project. It's just the right thing to do. I think there are plenty of reasons for why it's justified to extend it. We saw a spike in interest rates. We are over the hump. I'm sure you're excited about that.
Yes.
Woohoo, right? And so I think happy days are here again, and I think it's justified to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zuloff. Any other questions? Did you, I've got a couple of questions. Did you say $10 million from the land bank?
The application was for a $16 million. It would be a $6 million match on top of the $10 million ask. The ODOD, that's part of the Brownfield and Revitalization Grant Program. The original round has ended, but they have looked at the statutes and are opening up some of the first round applications and reviewing those prior to opening up the second round, which is probably 2 months overdue. So if we don't hit this first round, which we have gotten some cures from ODOD, so we're able to do that, hence the drilling out at the site the past week, just they asked for some additional environmental information. We're confident that, I don't think to jinx it, but them asking questions is a good sign. But yes, to answer your question, that's a $10 million.
And that's fine, and that's submitted through the county land bank? Is that, or do you submit it on your
We
own?
prepare the application and we would be a subrecipient with the land bank. So yes, we had to work with Pat and Ellen over there and
Okay.
Caleb.
And my other question was, you said something about the banks or the lenders have dropped. They used to finance 85.
Yeah, so loan to cost.
And I just wondered why why such a big gap to go down to 40?
Risk management. So we all remember back in 2006, 2008, the banks were the problems. They were providing bad loans out there, and now they're not, and they're going the opposite way. So they're being super safe. What it does to the inflation in the economy is differing point of view than I have, but it seems to be loosening up now.
Okay, good. That's all I have, and the good news is, since you do already have a PUD, we won't have to get into a long discussion.
Yeah, and the good news is we're not taking a step
Benefits of
back.
PUD.
I appreciate that I'm asking for an extension, but looking a couple months back, I could have very easily been here asking to start over with the PUD, with a move on the hotel, things like that. That wouldn't be considered a minor modification by this group or by the staff. So the fact that I'm here just asking for this
Yes.
means I don't have to retread and makes me a little happier.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, back to the table.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Mr. Miller.
recommend the extension as requested.
It's been moved by
Second.
Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. McGorry. Any further discussion?
Just to be clear, the motion is to approve the request for the extension, right? We're not recommending, we're approving it. Right, okay, thank you.
Ms. Rambo, would you poll the commission?
Jim Jackson,
Yes.
Pete McGorry,
Yes.
David Miller,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Mike Zuloff.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I think that concludes all of our business tonight. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Adjourn.
Good job.
You mentioned
Chairman
that boards and committees